You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with the Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry, and all to provide you with education and inspiration. And I'm feeling inspired today because I just got back from visiting my mother in Tampa, Florida. Probably my biggest fan for the podcast. And she's just such a role model for me. I'm not going to give away her age. I don't think she would like that. But let's just say that she has a lot of wisdom. And the way she's living her life and just really enjoying herself and accepting everything that comes and even embracing even the challenges. It's just really, she's my role model. So if you missed last week's episode, be sure to check it out. It was actually it was June 27th because I did not release an episode because it was July 4th. But on the 27th, I had photographer Jean-Pierre Ace. Really cool guy. That was a fun interview, good conversation. And today's guest is Augusta Cole from Augusta Cole Events, based in New York City and Charleston, South Carolina. I first met Augusta when she was the executive director working for Lynn Easton at Easton Events, where she garnered a stellar reputation for her wide-ranging abilities. And since then, she has now her own thriving business. Today, we talk about a variety of topics, including how she took the leap to start her own business, how she built her team, her process with clients, how she handles social media, how she balances personal with business, what her advice to someone starting their own business would be, and more. So enjoy this conversation with Augusta Cole. Augusta, it is just so good to finally be able to do this. I mean, we met a while ago and you were on the podcast with, God, I'm trying to remember. I think, wasn't it Christina Matucci and Rishi Patel? And Carrie. And Carrie Goldberg. Yes.
Yeah. That was so fun.
Oh, that was a great episode. I'll refer to that in the show notes so people can check it out. So yeah, I'm just so happy to have you on now. Where I want to start, Augusta, is is there anything in your childhood that kind of indicated in some way or another this passion, this interest that you have in weddings and events?
Oh gosh, I think, yeah, the signs were sort of in neon looking back. I loved throwing kind of elaborate birthday parties. I remember as a very small kid convincing my mom that I needed to hand deliver invitations on silver trays, address by address, to my little posse of girlfriends for us to dress up as movie stars and ride around in a limo and go to a fun hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, and have Shirley Temples at the bar. So I do think it was a little bit built in. And then hysterically, I recall, I guess it was like I was in middle school when it came out, but I definitely went and saw The Wedding Planner a few too many times in theaters. And I laugh at myself so much that my friends let me do that, but I did.
Well, did you go to school for anything related to this?
Art history and architectural history. So, and then I was at the University of Virginia, and I was a part of a kind of burgeoning field. They were launching the arts administration program when I was there in undergrad, and I loved being a part of the business of the arts. So that was sort of my schooling as it related to the creative and business side of the creative world.
Yeah.
But then I was always really into doing internships. So I had internships in fashion. I worked for Leela Rose in the city as kind of right out of high school, actually, which was an amazing experience. And then I worked at the Cooper Hewitt in development and special events. It was my first exposure to David Stark, actually, when he was doing the NDA galas.
Fantastic. Yeah, David's been on the show a few times. That's great.
Yeah, like way back when. We share that story now that we're friends, and it was a cute coming of age story. But so I did that. And then I also worked at a floral shop and trying to think of and then in PR and marketing at a couple different agencies. So I sort of got my feet wet in a lot of different, like whether it was project management, client management, creative, design related, different avenues before culminating with events.
Well, when we first met, it was in Charlottesville. You were executive director for Lynn Easton, and Augusta.
Yes.
You had an incredible reputation. I mean, seriously, I heard this like throughout interviews. There was a handful of people that would be talked about, and you were one of them in terms of the strong presence you had. So when you decided to start your own business, and I'd like to ask this of really everyone that's been on the show, it's a big leap. Like for myself, I was working for IBM, which was a very well-known Fortune 500 company. Then I worked for Lexmark, and I wanted to go full-time in music. And I remember I got into therapy to get help with the transition and how to do it as well as I could. And it was a really scary thing. But of course, any entrepreneur, all of us in this business, most of us had to make such a transition. Like, what was that process like for you? And I know that you did it in right before the pandemic hit too.
Yeah, gosh. It was, in a wonderfully supportive period of time. I feel like had been given an unbelievable amount of training over the decade when I was at Easton and with Lynn, and a very sort of, as I spoke about before, just a very empowered role to really understand what it means to run an event from top to bottom and manage that client relationship and all the aspects that go into putting on a wedding. So when kind of developing my own path forward, it was really focused on, how I was going to just build on the great education that I already had and where I wanted to go with kind of my own sort of design taste and style of client interfacing and types of events that we wanted to produce.
So Augusta, also, you're living in New York City, right? So you also made a huge move from Charlottesville to New York City. I mean, you jumped into it. You really dove in.
Yeah. So just to kind of reset, I started in Charlottesville and then I moved to Charleston actually in 2012 to launch our Charleston-based office. And then my husband and I lived in Charleston from 2012 to 2020, just to make sure that's clear.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Easton has presence in Charleston and Charlottesville.
So what was the decision in terms of moving to New York City? What was that all about?
Yeah. So I had been eager to get to the city. I'd lived in New York for a couple stints of my life, but my husband and I never lived here together. From a personal perspective, our married life had been in tertiary towns, Charlottesville, Virginia, and Charleston, but we both traveled so much for our careers that we really wanted to move to a bigger city. That's the first answer. And then second, from a professional perspective, sort of launching my business and my brand in New York, where most of my clients either have some sort of base or tie to, felt like a very good move just to kind of have a fresh launching platform, but then also great connectivity to my network, my professional friends, and a lot of my clients as well. So it's been a very inspiring decision, and I've loved the opportunities that have come out of taking that risk. And we absolutely love living in New York. It's been a great choice.
And my understanding of your first event, I think it was I heard it was a 9-person wedding at the end of June of 2020 at Sea Island. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, we did in June in the heat of COVID, literally a 9-person, just intimate family wedding. And then we made plans, which just happened for their May 2022 celebration at Sea Island. They had a very international set of guests, and they really needed to be sure to wait as long as they possibly could to ensure the guests could attend.
Yeah.
We pushed out about 2 years.
Well, and so I'd love to find out about what your general process is, Augusta, when from the start of when you meet a wedding client and through the event. I assume by now, you've got your own style of doing this. Generally, what is that?
Gosh, yeah. So I think one of the things that we like to do is always connect face to face with our potential clients, whether it be in person or on Zoom, and just really first kind of take a deep dive of getting to know what they're trying to achieve with their weddings, with the events, with the experience. We find that our clients are really interested in typically engaging us for the full weekend because we love the storytelling aspect of that, sort of the experience from guest first arrival or actually when they receive sort of invitations, but then when they arrive at the location, that first event, and then what happens, during the day, the next day, and then for the main event with the ceremony and the dinner and the dancing, like what's that all about? And what are their goals and objectives and priorities? And then sort of what's the last experience for the guests. So we sort of take a deep dive in understanding them as people and like where they love to travel and where they love to shop and where they love to eat. And that really gives us a good sense of where we need to go with their venues or where to take their venue or their home and sort of build on. So getting to know our clients really personally is an important part of our process. And then secondly, we really like to put them on a well-guided planning track. So making sure that our clients always feel like we're sort of a step ahead of them, and that they don't need to be worrying about anything because we're keeping them on target with all of our clear goals and objectives and sort of planning milestones. So we do that through shared planning site and also just through scheduled check-ins that they always know they have. So there is never that feeling of, oh gosh, should I be doing something?
I really like that idea, scheduled check-ins. I mean, to, like you say, to kind of anticipate any issues before they bring it up. I think that's really important. I think that's really good.
Our clients live very busy lives and very full lives. And we really want wedding planning and design to be a fun accessory to the experience, to their life, not something that dominates it.
Right.
So we try to set them up for success in that way.
Are you finding that people are now comfortable meeting in person? Like for me, obviously during the pandemic, we all had to switch over to Zoom. And, at first I was really uncomfortable. Like even these interviews, Augusta, I would travel to the United States to do all these interviews in person. And it was, an adjustment, going into some kind of a virtual place. And with my clients in the music business, it's the same thing. I'm having to do that. And now that people are getting more, let's just say more comfortable with the situation, we're starting to have more in-person meetings again. And I'm finding that I just feel like I'm so much more effective in person. I mean, you know what I mean? You could read people's body language. You just get the feeling. You can just kind of connect more because you don't have that limited, just straight time on Zoom and getting to it. I mean, it's real interesting to me, that whole transition from Zoom back to being in person again.
Yeah. I mean, I think being in person is like this really fun luxury now. And it's like wonderful to be able to have that time.
Yeah.
And I think what we try to do is when we are in person, really maximize that and really get a lot done. And I think decision-making can be super effective in person, especially on the creative side of things.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, I mean, we love our Zooming. We primarily speak to our clients on Zoom rather than phone calls because of the sharing screen capabilities, and from a efficiency perspective and just getting the sort of management aspect, the project management details done, to not have to travel to meet each other for an in-person meeting and just pop up our screens and knock through some details and then they go back to their day-to-day.
Right.
I think it's an awesome balance, but thank goodness we can be in person again for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely grateful for that. But I think we've all learned how to really maximize the days by utilizing Zoom.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I mean, there is a place for it, So can you tell me a story or two from a favorite, wedding, in terms of what it is that you were able to kind of find out about their personalities and how you then manifested that in terms of the planning and the design? Just anything that pops into your mind, I would love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I want to experience, kind of back to that, you started with the 9-person wedding and that then turned into their big celebration. We did one of the nights of the big celebration, which was just this past May, and the features on Over the Moon. So you can check out the pictures and things. Corbin Gherkin did a beautiful job with the photos. But my clients really wanted to celebrate the groom's Brazilian heritage, his culture.
Yep.
And we really put a lot of energy into this Friday night, Brazilian night. And from, curating the authentic Brazilian sound and working with Elon artists to get just the right musical ensemble and vocalists involved. And like we went through exactly the type of music and sort of the cadence of the night and how it was going to feel like a true sort of Brazilian evening. We worked on the food with the chefs at Sea Island and did, asado and had, live flame and just really kind of worked in recipes from the groom's mom that were authentic to the Brazilian flavor, like pão de queijo and brigadeiros, and really refined these recipes. We brought in cultural references with the escort card display. Like in order to pick up your seat, you also got these bracelets that were indicators of luck and goodwill and had different meaning based on the color. And we sort of told that story as guests arrived while this like fun, music was, drums and percussion was going that just felt very of the place. And I think one of the things that I've just loved being able to do is dive into those aspects of my clients' personal life and experiences and how to really bring that out to share with their guests. And I think while the whole weekend was fabulous, the Brazilian night really stood out as a memorable part of the weekend.
Well, I'm curious, how do you even find out what the details like of what you just described to me it's like I'm assuming that you had to do a lot of research to figure this out. When a client comes to you like this, and using this particular one as an example, that you want to have a Brazilian feel, a vibe, a theme evening, how do you go about finding out what to do? It just seems overwhelming to me to figure it out.
Well, and I think the lovely part here is you work with your clients. Like it wasn't necessarily work for them, but this was something authentic to the groom's family, and we were able to ask the questions of key family members to get the right intel and to back it up with research, of course, to be sure we were, paying proper homage to the concept.
Right.
But have that collaboration and communication with your clients so they can open up with these ideas and contribute them, I think is integral to the event feeling real and not feeling like a theme, because the whole goal was for it to feel, for this moment in time, you may be in Sea Island, but you're stepping foot on, the coast of Brazil.
Yeah, that's a great point too.
It was a different than going to, we have a Brazilian vibe. It was truly a Brazilian party.
Yeah. No, I love that. I want to make sure that you're aware of two other shows that are on the Wedding Biz Network. First, The Business of Being Creative, hosted by founder and president of The Business of Being Creative, Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Tune in every Tuesday to hear a new episode chock full of topics and advice for creative businesses. Also, check out the 2 seasons of Stop and Smell the Roses, hosted by the one and only lifestyle and event design expert, Preston Bailey. Preston speaks with such an honest voice. I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy hearing him on this unique platform. You can find both shows at theweddingbiznetwork.com or on your cell phone's podcast app for both The Business of Being Creative and Stop and Smell the Roses. What is one of the biggest challenges that you've ever had to face in your career? I love hearing about that. What have you run up against and how did you deal with it and overcome it? And I'm sure there were probably several. So
I know,
just maybe one that comes to mind.
I mean, I was with a little group of planning and personal friends last evening, and we were laughing that, our business is the business of problem solving. So
Right.
A blessing is that I can't think of any major catastrophes immediately, because with lots of layers of planning, you typically have a solve for most things. I think we all were faced with the unexpected over the past 2 years. So now we're just totally used to constantly changing plans.
Yeah, seriously. That's a good point. Yeah. You mentioned, having contingencies. I guess that's what you have, in all respects, right? Basically, are you thinking of that throughout the entire process and all the details that, okay, here's what might be able to go wrong. And if it does, here's what we're going to do. Or is it more just dealing with it in the moment?
Some things you just can't plan for, right? And you have to, part of who we are as planners is to be able to be nimble and quickly respond to things that didn't even fall in the plan A to Z contingencies. But I do think going into any scenario with whether it's weather related, whether it's temperature related, whether it's if the venue isn't going to be able to perform at this level or something related, that you have to have your contingencies A, B, C, and D, no question. But one of the kind of sweet anecdotes I can share for sure about my time at Easton is I certainly credit Lynn with being one of the great anticipators in our industry. And so I feel like I inherited that instinct to want to always anticipate sort of a worst case scenario and talk about it in advance rather than pretending it's always going to go well. You've got to, tackle those potentially negative scenarios head on and with your client so that we kind of address them now rather than, addressing an issue that we could have solved in advance.
Yeah.
With a short timeline.
Well, and then there's also, something that I've had to struggle with, which I've gotten a lot better at, but I really struggled with was staying really calm. And what I mean is not letting it show not only to the client, but even to my own team. That's something that I had to go through,
Yeah. Staying calm is probably, I think one of the most important aspects of a planner on, an event execution day is that, you can internally or via text or through walkie to your team express urgency or something's got to be fixed or we need everyone scurrying behind the scenes to solve for something so we don't rattle the client. But being calm and having everyone know that you've got everything under control is especially for wedding planners around the ceremony when nerves are at their highest.
Right. Everyone's
just
raw.
Being almost freakishly calm is important.
Yeah. No. Well, and part of my method too, which I finally realized looking back, is that I always figured it out. And so just to kind of keep that in front of me and not be so reactive, it's like, okay, hold on, let me breathe for a minute. We'll figure this out. I've got a great team. We're going to figure this out. Yeah.
Solutions-driven team is important.
So speaking of team, moving to New York City and starting your own company and all of that, launching, you've had to, create some kind of a team. How have you done that?
Oh, I have an awesome team and I'm so grateful for them. So when I say we, I mean it very strongly. I have an incredible colleague. Her name's Colette McCary. She's really my director of events. She's a rock star. She has her own sort of pedigree in this industry and put in her time with great event planning companies prior to joining me. And, together we really rock our events. And I am super grateful for her talents and strengths. I also have a technical director. He's an amazing addition to our team, Jonathan, and he's really involved on sort of the installations and breakdowns and the floor planning and thinking through, how sort of lighting and staging and production layers into our overall concepts. So that's been kind of less client interfacing, more for our internal team, but as an incredible asset and unbelievably talented and really bolsters what our abilities are. And then, one of the best decisions we made as a team was really early on in launching Augusta Cole. I have an awesome social media team who manages my social, which is really, my living portfolio. And I look at them as definitely teammates to our weekly operations.
Now, are you personally doing any posting or do you leave it completely to them?
So all of the content comes from me. My Sunday Save series is all generated by me. All of the content are events, obviously, that we're producing, but I get on a weekly call and I strategize with them and we go through imagery and content and we work on caption writing and then they execute it. And it's just a really great way to, have social be regular and definitely something that, our audience can count on, but it doesn't sort of interrupt our day to day. And of course, there's spontaneity. If we are going to a fun meeting or meeting with clients or at a great site visit, we'll, pop those things up or doing something fun over the weekends that could be engaging. But there's a sort of a foundation of pattern and rhythm to our method, which is great.
And coming back to, talking about your director of events, Colette, how do you go about finding somebody like that?
Well, I do think I had a great kind of right timing. In this story, an instance, I put out an Instagram story that I was looking for a position and was going to be hiring and filling it fast. And I was really fortunate with a strong slew of applicants at that time, one of which was Colette. And she sort of had some background references on me. And we went through a series of interviews and she just stood out like a star. So I count my lucky stars.
Yeah. Yeah. No, having someone like that is just obviously so critical. I mean, that's really so important. So at this point, like, Augusta, what's the hard part? I always like to get into that too with people. What's the hard part that you struggle with having this kind of a business and at this time?
I think it's time management, honestly.
Good one.
It's really just, there's so much happening. There's so much demand, or interest, let's say, because there's, a new level of weddings occurring, as a result of
That's right. We can finally party. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know that's not unique to me. This is our industry feeling it. It's a rush. And there's always this desire to say yes and fill your life with lots of yeses, and figuring out how to, best allocate your time to, the clients that are a great fit for our company, that we're a great fit for them, for, also doing the hard work for our clients and having that desk time where we're dedicated to just kind of working it through versus being on site visits and doing that creative process and brainstorming process and being out of the office. And then also just time to continue to, network and be with our community.
That's right.
And engage. So I think there are a lot of demands of this creative field where it's all about the people. It's a very personal, connected, a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time on Zoom, but then it's also a very meticulous, methodical, detail-oriented field.
Right.
So, I think I would love to have a few more hours every day. How about you?
Well, oh my God, I could mirror back everything that you're saying. I mean, time management and just becoming so incredibly efficient, and organized. I mean, to me, it's all about the organization, and if I'm
absolutely
right, and if I'm not organized enough, I feel too anxious. It's just, it's too overwhelmed. And so, to me, it's so much of it is about being organized. Well, and
on that note, actually, Andy, that's our next hire, and they're starting in July, which we're so excited about, is, our client services manager. And it basically is an internal role to make sure that all of our clients' accounts stay as tidy and on track and managed and ahead of the game as possible.
Great idea.
We are on the road so much producing beautiful events that we really want someone always, back in the office, available to them, accessible, to just kind of keep things, whether it be contracts or accounting or billing or, timeline updates or guest list updates or RSVP updates, always on track. So that's, a new sort of role we're integrating, and really thrilled about what that can do for our team.
What about balance between your personal life and your business life? I mean, you mentioned that you're married. Do you feel, Augusta, like you have a balance? I feel like that's something we're all struggling with.
I know. What is balance? I think
right. What does that mean?
Once, a balanced life, there's no definition for it. Like you find your own balance.
Yeah.
I think, personally, things are going really well. We make sure that we carve in, some sort of vacation to look forward to, and have that on the horizon, spontaneous date nights, things like that.
I agree with that. Always have something on the books. That's how I feel. Yeah.
And then I think, personally, for like wellness and well-being, like we really do try to, protect our hours in the office and, wrap at a reasonable time so people can get home and be a part of their own life, and start at a reasonable hour. And of course, there are times where, we're working 20-hour days, but that shouldn't be the norm, because we want a sustaining lifestyle in this amazing field.
Well, and we want the people working for us to not get burned out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's paramount to me.
Yeah.
And then for me, my little elixir is running. I have a little running club that I'm a part of, and that's sort of a fun, like totally outside of this world that I live and operate in. And just, it's my sort of my little way to clear my head and get outside and do something good for myself. So I think everybody needs that something.
Yeah, I agree with that. So last thing before we wrap up, if you were, let's say, Augusta, you're giving a class, a master class to planners, designers who are in the position you were at, where, you're going to now take that leap, go out on your own, develop your own business structure. Like what is the most important thing or couple or few things that you think, that you would advise somebody who's going to take that leap that you took?
Yeah. Well, an exercise that I did with a buddy of mine who was actually a brand developer, he challenged me to spend some time with 4 words that described your business or who you wanted your business to be, and then associate about 6 images with each of those words. And I did that exercise before I, established any sort of brand direction for our logo or anything. And I feel like that was incredibly helpful. And it's been an anchor, through a lot of points where, you just want to stay on track with who you are and who you want to develop your business into being, and also the type of clients that you attract. So I think that's a really great exercise, and it was pretty formative for me.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another is just like harness who you are. If you are going out and taking a leap, like you have to figure out, what is appealing about you? What are you going to do somewhat differently? And don't be afraid to make, whether it's a subtle splash or a big splash with that. And I think confidence is a huge part of it, and not being afraid to take some risks, and hopefully there'll be great reward as a result.
Oh, that's a huge part. Taking the risk, I think, everyone in this business talks about that. I mean, if we don't take risks, then we're just not going to really differentiate ourselves. That's right.
Yeah.
It kind of leads to a whole branding.
And then I think the other thing too, and I could go on about this, is just hard work, like sheer hard work. There's like no substitute for it. So being excited, and like, I'm so lucky. I wake up every day and I literally love what I do. And that is a serious blessing. And I could work all the time because it's a joy and I love it. So I just think making sure if you are going to go out on your own, that you're jumping into a field that you sincerely and genuinely love, because there's a whole lot of layers of work involved when you are operating on your own, for sure.
Yeah. Well, geez, Augusta, this has been so good to reconnect like this. I really had a great time with you here, and I appreciate you coming on to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Augusta Cole. Be sure to check out her website, which is augustacole.com. And you can find her on social media, particularly Instagram at Augusta Cole. And be sure to check out the show notes with event pics that our guest provided in your cell phone podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And also, if you could subscribe to the podcast, you'll know whenever a new episode comes out. So again, subscribe to The Wedding Biz. And next week, we're going to have the CEO of Party Slate, my good friend, Julie Novak. We'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.